Good evening, everyone. Welcome to Footy Classified. So much news to get to off the top tonight. So let's go straight to welcoming in our panel. The award-winning journalist, one of the finest journalists in the country, is Damian Barrett. Damo, great to have you.
Good evening, Sam.
The man with all the medals, the Geelong legend, Jimmy Bartell. Welcome, James.
Good evening, Sam.
And we gave him a week off, but he's been managed back into the team. The Lord himself, the Essendon legend, Matthew Lloyd. Lordo, great to have you.
Great to be back, Sam.
Damo, so much happening in the last 24 hours at AFL House. Now between Port Adelaide and an umpire, Zak Butters and Nick Foot.
Yeah, they're the specific people in part of it. Words exchanged at Adelaide Oval last night. It's now off to the tribunal hearing tomorrow night, where lawyers will now take this case apart. But let's recap it first. Take a look at the he said nature of this saga.
Boot on! 50 metres. Yeah, I'm reporting it. I'm reporting it.
Yeah, I'd love to know the language that I said, because I went up to him after the game and obviously just wanted to have a chat like any two humans do, and he said he didn't want to speak to me, and yeah, all I said is, how's that a free kick? And yeah, he gave 50 and said I'm on report. So I had a few teammates there right next to me, Ollie Wine, so yeah, I'm curious to follow that one up, because yeah, I'm never going to say anything bad to the umpire. So yeah, I just wanted to follow up and ask what he thought I said from his end. So yeah, obviously a bit frustrated because it leads to a goal, and I think I'm a pretty honest bloke out there and have a good relationship with most umpires. So I'm sure the club will deal with that.
It's a fascinating turn of events, not just what happened on the field, Damo, but we now have a situation, Lord, as we bring you into it, where both have doubled down on their versions of events. So I think, I'm sure the AFL would have loved there to been, okay, well, maybe it was a misunderstanding, Lordo, but this is what the version of events of what the umpire Nick Foot believes Zak Butters was saying. How much are they paying you? Which is essentially, in turn, accusing the umpire of being a cheat.
Yeah, I know them both, and they're both fantastic people. Nick Foot, a lot of people want to turn on umpires a lot, and they're easy targets, but Nick's a fantastic human being, and he's hurt. This is a Port Adelaide statement, Damo.
Yeah, and you can see how strongly they are supporting their player. There's a reference that on screen there to the Brownlow medalist Ollie Wines, who's going to endorse what Zak Butters said happened in this exchange, that was unambiguously adamant on what was said. And this is what this whole issue now gets down to, the fact that both Foot and Butters feel aggrieved by their integrity being perceived to be questioned today. Foot for what he felt he heard last night, and Butters for having that allegation levelled against him. This would be a whole lot easier, Jimmy, if there was actual audio of this, because then we wouldn't be dealing with a he said situation.
No, I agree with that, Damo, and you know how this plays out better than most. What is the solution, or what is the outcome likely from this? Because if they both stand their ground, but also add in the fact that the AFL want to support their umpires and going to bat for them, and Nick Foot said, yep, that's what I said, but of course, you know, Zak Butters, as he's got his story, which we treat with the same manner of respect. Where's the solution in all this? Well,
effectively, they've just dumped it to the tribunal, where lawyers will take it apart. And we even saw a knock to the stomach of a player last week, Will Hayward. Took 2.5 hours to resolve. So this will go every bit as long as that, I believe. And ultimately, the outcome is going to be rather anticlimactic in that it will only be a fine, even if there is a semblance of a word that was used that is going to be levelled against Zak Butters. It won't be a suspension, is what I've been told tonight.
Can we ever have mediation in a situation like this? So get the two men in the room together, have a mediator, try and sort it out that way, rather than going to a tribunal in this situation.
I think that's probably, Lordo, what Greg Swan would have done today, Damo.
Would have tried to get there, but they were so adamant that Zak was adamant. I never said what Nick said. I'm alleged to have said, and Nick's not deviating off what he felt he heard last night.
Could we have a situation where we've seen it in tanking situations where he gets a fine, but he's not found guilty? Because I know if I'm Zak Butters and I wouldn't want to accept something, as minimal as the fine may be, to say that I accuse someone in the sense of taking money?
It's a great question, because this is where I fear, Jimmy, that it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. Like Damo's saying it might. So if Zak is found guilty of saying that to an umpire, which is a fairly big accusation, even if it was just in the heat of the moment, it's only a $1,500 fine. Do you think that's sending the right message to the rest of the competition?
Look, I think it is the fact that it's being looked at. That's the message. It's a good reminder that we want to treat the umpires with respect. Completely get that. But I'm picking up where Lloyd is going. That you can sit them both in a room or via a link-up, of course, you know, Zak being over there in Adelaide, and you can both agree to disagree. And why can't we just call that shake of hands, support the umpire? Good reminder, we want to respect the umpires. But if you don't have the audio, And there's people around saying, well, Zak didn't say that. We're at a stalemate.
Yeah, and the other wrinkle to this before we get off it is that Nick is, I think, the only umpire that's also working for, separately in horse racing, for Sportsbet, who's the major bookmaker and bookmaking partner of the AFL competition. Now, if the allegation that Nick is saying is that, well, how much are they paying you or what are they paying you for, that just adds another layer to this that the AFL would probably rather wasn't part of that situation. Damo, funnily enough, though, it's not the only thing that has been keeping Port Adelaide up across gather round against the AFL.
Yeah, well, they took and seized the opportunity of having all the AFL heavies in their town on the weekend, whereby their own chairman, David Koch, and Chief Executive Officer Matthew Richardson made sure they got well and truly in front of the AFL Commission Chairman Craig Drummond and also the AFL CEO Andrew Dillon and others from both parties to have basically a last-ditch bid to have the AFL delay the mooted changes to the national draft, which would ultimately see them have to pay a whole lot more draft currency for upcoming father-son players. And this is in light of the access that both Brisbane Lions particularly and Gold Coast Suns and other clubs have had extremely successful access at very, very low draft currency. If you look at the Brisbane Lions players on that list there on the right-hand side of the screen, all 6 players on that list were taken under the very cheap scenarios, either as father-sons, Will Ashcroft, the two-time Norm Smith medalist, or academy players on really low draft pick numbers. There is a change and a mooted change for that to be the case this season, but Port with access to Dougie Cockram this year. There's another player, Zeems Pilot, Jimmy, Lewis Salopek and Tavita Roden, all in upcoming seasons. That's their situation right now. They are in trouble at the moment, Port Adelaide. They know they are at the bottom of the ladder finish this season, most likely. And as it stands, they'll have to pay true draft value for Dougie Cockram, which could be overall number 1 pick.
So this is interesting, Jimmy, because for so many months, the whole competition has been thinking that these rule changes would come in and impact this national draft. Damo's now saying that they may be rethinking.
Well, they've had this last-ditch pitch, and
do you think it's had an impact on the AFL?
I think the AFL has listened. Look, they've listened to Carlton also in this space, Essendon as well in this space. They've listened to the clubs, but the expectation was that it was going to be introduced for the 2026 period. But we are now mid-April. Now, this is in the same season in which these rules were supposedly mooted to be introduced. We're 6 rounds of football in, already into this season in which these changes were to impact these clubs, and the AFL hasn't yet articulated exactly how it looks. And I think there's a growing hope, at least from some of these clubs that mostly adversely affected, potentially, that they will just water down ever so slightly. Look, ultimately, Port Adelaide wants to grandfather this, to be exempted from these harsh changes until after Tasmania.
No one wants them to impact their club, right?
Yeah, and that's understandable, Sam, because this is ultimately about equalisation now, this wider debate. Brisbane Lions have been equalised, if you want to look at that list there, in the eyes of Port Adelaide, Carlton and Essendon, and at a time when those 3 clubs most desperately need access to what Brisbane Lions had access to, they're having it ripped away from them.
No, I completely agree with that. It should go up until Tassie comes into the competition, because then we'll have compromised drafts. And just the players that we highlighted on the screen there, they've been tracked from the age of 14 and 15. So you actually start to make plans multiple years going forward with your draft. And even doing deals last year, clubs going, well, hang on, just hypothetically, you've got Carlton using the Cody Walker example. When you're moving around picks, you're actually going, will we be beneficial to try and get picks for Charlie Kerner into the following year? Now we can trade 2 years because if you're Port Adelaide, because we've got father-sons in 2 years. So why don't they just do it until Tassie comes in, and then we've got all these compromised drafts. But off the back of it too, they're very, very slow in doing it, and then it's happened really quickly. So this is the issue with it. So I agree with those 3 clubs. Take it up to Tassie, and then that's when we come out of the back of Tassie, we're back to something more level.
And it might just be a glimmer of hope, Sam, just to I suppose, encapsulate a very, very complex conversation over the weekend, which has been going on now for years.
Just to wrap it up, clubs are now asking, what's the point of having an academy, the way where it's getting to? So you invest all this money, what's the point? Someone going the other way and say, we have academies, we all should have to take 1 player from each a year in our academy, whether it's a rookie or a listed player. Otherwise, it's not worth the investment with how hard it's got within the rules.
Speaking of Port and going back to Zak Butters, like, he's already the biggest talking point in the game for several reasons, but he played so well, 9 coaches' votes on the weekend, and now with all the money, I think Cal Toomey on Classified last week talked about a potential $2 million offer from Richmond. Is he worth that sort of cash, Lordo, compared to the rest of the comp?
I think he is worth every cent that he gets because of how tough he is. He's just ferocious at the ball. So there's a point of difference in that sense. But there's not too many players who in the comp, like I think Heaney and Pickett and those types who kick goals.
Yep.
And that's the biggest knock on him. So as good as he is, he doesn't hit the scoreboard hard like some of those best players do. Even Nick Dacos has got to build on that and try and hit the scoreboard more. But no, because of his physicality and his toughness, he'll have that many clubs coming at him, and he should be the highest paid player in the comp if he decides to take that deal.
And despite the fact that he was so good last night, he couldn't get his team over the line against the Saints.
Yeah, and that's the problem for you, Sam. That you need support around you, and he's got to ask himself: it's a lifestyle, but does he want to be in a bottom four side for the next 5 or 6 years?
Speaking of the Saints and speaking of cash, how are their big signing recruits going, Jimmy? How did you see Tom De Koning in particular?
Yeah, look,
last night?
I think we all admit he hasn't hit top form, and it's still trying to work out the combination with Rowan Marshall. And this is still part of the development. We know a lot of this money that he's getting paid, and people are going to hold him to that big cheque or that St Kilda handed him on the fact that you need to pay extra to get him out of their footy club. And there's a bit of a potential element, but he hasn't quite shown it yet. He's still trying to find his way. Marking the football, he is taking 4 marks. You'd love him to push forward and have greater impact on the game, but he just looks a little bit out of touch. But there's no questioning his energy and effort for the contest.
Yeah, a lot of clubs refuse to take ruckmen in the first 10 picks in the draft because they just take too long to develop. So you've had the odd one. You'll have a Nat Nui or a Luke Jackson.
Tim English,
who are special. But other than that, you say, no, let someone else develop them for 4 or 5 years and then we'll get them across. And I just wonder whether you don't pay a ruckman that much either, because are you better off just getting a Ned Reeves from Hawthorn, pay them $500,000 versus paying someone $1.7 million? I just think that it's too big a payment for a ruckman who don't often influence games.
He was seen as special, though, wasn't he? I mean, Max Gawn, I think, at the start of last year said that he could become the best player in the competition.
Max did say that.
The Saints probably weren't the only ones who thought that he had that potential to be special. Is that fair?
I think Wanganeen Miller's price just kept going up and up because he probably had 10, 12 rippers in a row. I don't think De Koning's ever done that.
Let's talk about your Bombers. They got their first win in a long, long time. They were about to break the club record for most amount of losses in a row, but at the Adelaide Oval they turned it on, and it was the Melbourne midfield who were decimated in the end. Yeah,
they were flogged in the end after half time, and they gave up, Melbourne. So as good as they'd been for the first 4 or 5 weeks, they just rolled over, and you see what Essendon have done. They've conceded all these disposals and marks across the first month, but look at that, minus 99 marks in that regard, clearance.
Did they get ahead of themselves?
There was a lot of articles, and they're probably in a honeymoon period with Stephen King off the back of the Gold Coast win. But, they were outworked, out-hunted, outran. So, it's a loss that really hurts them.
You watch the Bombers as closely as anyone. Did something stand out in particular as to the difference between their best and their worst? Was it personnel being back?
Well, I think Jordan Ridley, who's the best and fairest winner at the club, makes him so much better when he's back there. He makes Mackay look so much better. And Mackay had 23 disposals. When Ridley's not there, sometimes he can have 5 or 6 and just be led to the ball. But I think he's their best backman by the length of the Flemington Straight. But he just doesn't get out on the field that much and just made them look so strong, Jimmy, behind the ball.
Yeah, and you highlighted the uncontested marks, and we look at the differential there. I thought their pressure around the ball was much better. I thought their starting positions behind the footy were a little bit closer to their direct opponent because they can intercept the footy, but they didn't need to be 20 metres off. They're a bit closer, played into their strengths. But the thing that jumped out to me too, and I'd love to see for the rest of the year, is big 2-metre Peter playing in the ruck. I know, Lordo, you highlighted his game against Max Gawn. Max was still good, but I thought 2-metre Peter was excellent in the ruck. And I'd like them to keep with him as being the number 1 ruck. You can use Blackiston at either end of the ground and be the second ruck, but I'd love them to start centre bouncers, him to assume the role, because the development of Caddy, Edwards and May on the forward line, you've already got 3 big boppers there that you want to see for the future. I think his physicality, his ability to mark the footy and can kick it, and then do this, push forward on the opposition ruck. I think he can expose opposition a lot better doing it from the ruck position than always being the deep forward.
And they played Sam with a confidence I've not seen in a long, long time. So they went after the throat of Melbourne in that second half and played with a physicality and a hunt and a belief that hasn't been seen. So now they go up to the Gold Coast where they'll be massive underdogs, but let's see if they can be competitive in right in that one.
Well, the Collingwood Footy Club, they've been physical in so many of their contests and they have shown up year after year under Craig McRae, Damo, so many times. But They didn't get the chocolates on the weekend. They were unable to get over the line against Fremantle. It's asked questions, begged questions, I should say, about their forward line, which we've had discussions at this desk time and time again. This is what their injured skipper, Darcy Moore, said about backs versus forwards going into the game.
You know, we've got work to do with our offence. Some of our inside 50 conversion numbers aren't where we want them. You know, forward 50 stoppages and even inside 50 differential isn't exactly where we want it either. But having said that, I'm pretty sure 17 other teams in the league would love to be the number one ranked defence, and the reality was that was us last year.
And that's probably true, Jimmy and Lordo, but it's okay to be doing things up one end, but they can't seem to score as fluently as they would like.
Yeah, because they are so strong behind the football defensively, at times it takes the pace and tempo out of the game, and we've seen in the early rounds that your ability to spring off your defensive play, and that's keeping forwards at home, it's keeping wings wide, and it slows them down and it makes it very difficult for them to go into their own forward line because it gives the opposition opportunities to flood back, and that's probably why the inside 50 efficiency numbers aren't great. They had a number of shots the other night and didn't convert, but De Koning out, it's another mid forward who doesn't who does hit the scoreboard, and then you're looking for midfield goals as well, and it's really Nick who's the one who hits the scoreboard from out of the midfield.
And we've now seen 5 matches where they're inside the bottom 4 when it comes to points 4 on the season, and they're down with Richmond and Carlton and West Coast. And when you're only racking up 39 points, Lordo, in a game of footy, you are exposed to what happens late in that game. And late in that game, the Dockers kicked the last 2 goals of the game to win it, which they did the previous week of themselves, the Dockers, against Adelaide at the same venue.
Yeah, so you'd say they should have won the game, and well, you put the 2 teams on paper. Freo have a far better side. They have weapons, Amos and Tracy, Luke Jackson, all these players. But I look at it, Elliott's given them everything so much over the years. Can't keep asking Elliott to do what he does. McStay, been a disappointment for Collingwood. Buller, he's a B grader in terms of he was never going to be the hope that they'd be. McCreary's been injured or off. Lipinski hasn't given them what they'd hoped for. De Koing's inconsistent. So
what would you do Thursday night against the Blues?
Yeah.
Are you at a point now where you're going to have to try something completely different?
Yeah, obviously Darcy Moore's out injured, so maybe it is Jeremy Howe, who we've spoken about in the past, potentially going forward, but yeah, I just don't think...
Would you do that? If you're Craig McRae right now, would you move the magnets that violently, or would you give it another week?
Well, I think... I'd nearly go for it. They're getting to that stage now in the season where they're already falling a fair way behind the top 4, top 6, so they may have to try something like that. Against a side like Carlton, they potentially could get away with it with.
Strong start on Footy Classified. Don't go anywhere. There is plenty more coming up after the break, including the Western Bulldogs. They lost their bite on the weekend. Lloyd tells us where it went wrong. The Black Hole Suns have Dimmer's new toys lost a bit of their lustre. And alarm bells for Adam as the Tigers feel the weight of another big loss. More on Footy Classified right after this. Back to Footy Classified. Yes, they lowered their colours. Probably the perfect summation about the Bulldogs from their coach, Luke Beveridge, on the weekend. Lorda, there were reasons and context for it, given what happened with some injuries. But you've been pretty strong on how much you've liked them during the year. Did you see something on the weekend that would change that opinion?
Well, he was disappointed in their intent. So you can lose games of football because you don't have your number one ruckman. But they were beaten everywhere. They were smashed around the ball, smashed in the midfield. They were out-hunted by Hawthorn. But also notice that when you have 2 players to the stars that Norton and Darcy are, that you can fall into the trap of just saying, let's just kick it to them and they'll do the rest. And I think that Hawthorn just picked that apart with Barris and also Josh Battle. If you go down to Geelong on Friday night and you just want to bomb it down, Tom Stewart and these guys just absolutely love that. They live for that, Blixarves, and they'll have a plan for this. So I was thinking of a guy like Riley West, who was so important to them last year, kicking 37 goals. He hasn't kicked a goal for a month. He's hardly laid his hands on the ball. And I think to myself, we might be asking, he used to hit up and get hit up as well, but he doesn't see it. And so I think it's become so predictable that what was such a strength has now become a weakness for them. So it's something that they'll have to look at going into this next game and for the next month.
And Lotto, you study this caper better than anyone we know, and you did it yourself so successfully. When you have a look at some players who are coming out of contract in 2026, player from that game, Mitch Lewis, who has had his own injury problems, as someone who's you're really close with, Ben King, and also Jed Walter from the Gold Coast Suns. Of that trio of players who find themselves determining their own football futures, who appeals to you most for other clubs?
Well, King's the one that will kick, he guarantees you 70 goals a year. He just does that. But Mitch Lewis is the one that you get for, I don't know what you're getting for. If you get him for $700,000 instead of trying to pay someone like King $2 million. Walter, I'm not sure about right now because he lacks tricks. In terms of he doesn't mark the ball, what's he like at ground level?
You're paying him on potential, aren't you?
On potential, whereas Mitch Lewis out of contract at the end of the year, he's the one that you could try and prize out with a far better contract that he'd get elsewhere.
You've studied lists pretty closely and done it at several clubs. Are you going for the big money recruit that's got the guaranteed, or are you going for pennies on the dollar, a bit more Moneyball style?
Yeah, it's going to be difficult to answer. It depends which club.
Yep.
So each of those players could probably fit different clubs, and I know there's some crossovers. Mitch Lewis has had some injury concerns, but he can play high really well, and that's what we've seen in the last couple of weeks. Call it the old centre-half forward role where he's got on his bike a fair bit and then dropped deeper. I still think Walter has got a lot of untapped potential and could go really well either with a very experienced forward next to him or coming along with a younger group. Such as the Tigers, grow with a younger group. And as Lloyd touched on, Ben King's the known quantity, but he's going to cost you a lot more money. And do you have that cap space if you're at the top of the table already?
Speaking of Ben King, his teammates have some issues, the Gold Coast Suns. It's just a question of how deep those problems go. Their coach, fair to say, Dimmer's a little concerned.
We sort of have them ranked very, very highly. They're playing some really, really good footy, and the fact of the matter is there's a gap between us and those sides at the moment. I think I shouldn't probably say this, but I think they're a top 4 quality side. Once again, they've got a really established core group of players that play a great style of footy, and we've got to close that gap. We're not there yet.
Pretty amazing concession, Lordo, from Damien Hardwick, given that they were one of the favourites for the flag going into this season.
They were officially a favourite after the season even started.
Yep. They went and got Christian Petrarca, who had made an amazing start. Now, we know he's been injured. We know Humphrey was injured. But, the Swans missed the finals last year. And now you've got the coach of the Gold Coast Suns saying, we are off those teams. Is he right? Should he be right? Where do you sit on this?
I can understand where if you're off a bit and you can have a bad day and you get pants by the Swans. But the week before, they were beaten by Melbourne. They shouldn't be losing to Melbourne with the talent they've got out there. So Hardwick is a ruthless person. He's one of the most ruthless people I've ever met in football in my time playing with him. So I can only imagine what he's doing. Mouth guards, bring that. He's that type of coach that he asked for that.
School?
Old school this week. And I just think they've got to look at their forward line set up. So we just touched on King and Walter and Ethan Reid. And the ball's just not living in their forward line. So they've lost a bit of that. That's why I love Ben Long for what he brings to the Gold Coast Suns. So it's just spitting out of there far too easily. So against the Swans, they only laid 7 inside 50 tackles. So this just ball comes in and comes out. So they've probably got to look at that. I know Jamara's out with a hamstring, so he's not the answer to that. But they may have to look at going a little bit smaller. And it doesn't get easy. They've got Bombers this week and then Hawthorn in Tasmania.
And Jimmy, they're much vaunted midfield operations, which has been very successful in recent seasons. We've seen Petrarca now injured, though, in a short time. He's been at the club. Matt Rowell's been back for 2 matches and they've lost both those matches. It's understandable he's underdone. But are there issues with Noah Anderson and others around that midfield?
Yeah, you go as a collective, don't you? And we highlighted Petrarca and Humphrey out being that forward combination. And Matt Rowell doesn't look right yet. I think we can all admit that. And he gets a little bit of a pass for that because it's difficult for him to tackle. And you see even taking ground balls. But sides are going to put more time and energy and effort into your best players. And you look at the highlights here, he's very reluctant to get that mitted hand out, which he'd normally just crunch those tackles. I think he's got enough credits in the bank for us to know, well, that's not the normal Matt Rowell. Fumbling a little bit, which he never does. But people are going to go to work on Anderson because can they body him into contests and stop him then going from inside to out where he's most dangerous? But I think that the next stage for them is that maturity. When things aren't going well, how do we change up the game? Because we know when Gold Coast get the game forward of stoppage and forward of contested situations, they play the game almost on a downhill. Sides are just taking a bit of the pace and tempo out and they can't fight it back.
Wonder if they've got an issue in the ruck that we're going to start talking about for the next few weeks as well, because watching them throw Mac Andrew in there in the second half, we know that the Wits has been on the downturn for a little while, which is natural for a man of his age, but what they do with Moyle, anyway, they've got a few issues, Damian Hardwick. Andrew McGualter, Damo's got some issues with Harley Reid, and it's not something that we're just coming to now. This has been a conversation we've had for more than a year.
It's probably not his biggest issue, but you can just see the build-up with frustration is a word I'm prepared to use here. Sam, when you look at what he said after round 2, after round 4, and then after the weekend on Harley Reid's behaviour in game.
I think it does. It is a sign to Harley's maturity. He's working hard on his discipline. He's not going to be perfect, and that's okay. He's going to be playing on the edge, which is what we want him to do, because I'm a believer that the best players have to play on the edge, and that's a good part of his game. But he's going to work really hard on his discipline. Specifically, what were the incidents tonight?
So there was the 50-metre penalty that cost the goal.
He just dropped the ball instead of giving it back.
The off the ball one after sort of Jimby gets hit.
It's not great. He gave a free kick away, and the outcome was a goal from 45 from the boundary. I don't want Harley to give away free kicks, and we talk about that, but the fact he's trying to stand up for his teammates, it's a pretty good trait. Look, Harley let himself down in that area today, and he knows that. So that was not the way we want Harley to play. He's a very good player, a very, very good player, and he's important to us, but we want him to be important for the whole time, and we want to ensure his discipline doesn't tip over.
I just wonder whether they've tried a different voice. So outside of the West Coast Eagles, like imagine sitting Harley Reid down with a Luke Hodge when they're next in Melbourne and talking about, or Jonathan Brown used to be that undisciplined, where he used to get suspended 2-3 times a year and then changed all that because he was hurting his team. So I just think that may be a different voice for him. The West Coast Eagles, they've probably pandered to him for a long time and they haven't wanted to upset him and they don't want to lose him. I think he's shown he's a West Coast Eagles person now, but giving him a different voice to speak to outside of the West Coast could be the best thing for him.
What did you take out of that game from a Geelong perspective?
They were professional enough. They rested a number of players and still got players to come back in. I think the form of Tanner Bruin's been a big positive for the Cats as they're looking for another midfielder, which allows them to play Holmes off at half-back different times. Bailey Smith went to the half-forward line. So they're constantly searching for the extra midfielder, and that's probably why they're in the market for midfielders from other clubs. But I think they're just a pretty professional unit over the weekend at Norwood.
Bailey Smith high up in the coaches' votes again on the weekend, having another great start to the year. We've got plenty more coming up on Footy Classified, including the water cooler opening round once again in the crosshairs, plus how Carlton need to shift things to save Michael Voss, good call, bad call, the cook, and a whole lot more. Yes, welcome back to Footy Classified. It is time now for the water cooler, all thanks to the great people at Hyundai. And tonight we are going big on what has become the fixture farce. Every single club wants to have their say, boys, on what the best fixture looks like, particularly going into season 2027. First, let's hear from Craig Kelly, the boss of Collingwood, and what he thinks, and then the response from the league chief, Andrew Dillon, on the Sunday Footy Show.
The fixture's flawed, the fixture's wrong, and it's the most unequal part of our game now, and everything else is equalised.
Well, how do you get it right then?
Cut. We've got to blow it up. We've got to start again, and we've got to have an open mind to thinking, how do we get an even situation where we're playing each other the right amount of times?
So we had 5 games in opening round. It did tick a lot of boxes. It was really well viewed. But we listen to the fans and we understand. And next year we know the season start is going to be different because we've got a test match at the MCG in the middle of March. So we're working through all the permutations for the fixture for next year.
And while we're here, Craig Kelly wanting to blow the fixture up and Andrew Dillon admitting to a form of change coming. We've got the other layered situation of the South Australian Premier Peter Malinauskas ramping up his state's bid for the gather round component and the throwing into the overall conversation possibilities of the state of origin game being played in South Australia as part of this latest contract to keep gather round. So here's Peter Malinauskas and his strong views on the need to keep South Australia exclusive when it comes to gather round.
I'm not willing to countenance an agreement that doesn't lock away exclusivity. Okay. I don't want the AFL coming in and saying, oh, OK, we're going to pay you money to take away the exclusive rights. It's got to be exclusive because it's got to be unique. And if it's not unique, then it's not worth having. We've got to hold the line on this, right? Because if we start to water gather round down by everyone else having a turn, then it's not worth the investment.
So there's a lot to wade through in this conversation we're having today as part of the water cooler, Lloyd. You're massive on the non-working elements of opening round now that we've had it for 3 years. They're hamstrung the AFL when it comes to what they can do next year, despite the concession that there will be change because of the 150th year anniversary of the Ashes Test match between Australia and England at the MCG in that period of time.
I think the Test match is a blessing for the AFL to be able to say, you know what, we need to change our fixture because there's a Test match coming up. There was clubs complaining. We've had a 16 14-day break.
18 days for
18
Hawthorn.
days. Some have played a game. Then you come up a team who's match hardened, some who aren't. So everyone's unhappy. I don't know what Craig's answer or solution was to evening them up when you've only played 23 weeks and there's 18 teams.
What he did throw up, and he said it was just that something that has been canvassed, is something that has been discussed sometimes, and that is to have each team play each other once to start the season. So you get to round 17 and you've played every team once, and then you reconfigure the fixture with how the ladder looks at that stage or through various other means. So at least it's
too simple, Damo.
Well,
what about
I
the
think
money
that's...
side of it, Damo? Where the AFL players, they don't want to be paid less, do they? So
No, that you still play the 23 matches, but you'd play each club once before you doubled up on the other games, and that would be predicated on how the ladder looks after the 17 games.
And the mess continues off the back of opening round, which you highlighted, Lloydie. We've got all these staggered buys and staggered breaks, and the AFL are trying to make up for it by having this ridiculous situation where we've got double headers on Friday night. But the issue here is Geelong and Bulldogs is a great game in its right. They've played some cracking games at GMHBA Stadium, but the whole point of opening round was to get your eyes and attention on the northern clubs, and one way to do that is have Sydney and the Giants play. So you get actually an opportunity to have those two in prime time, but you put another game on pretty much overlapping. So you actually minimise what should be all eyes and attention on Sydney and football up north there. You add to the fact, of course, forever and a day I've been arguing about Adelaide and Port Adelaide should be a standalone game, the showdown. They've proven in their history that no matter where they are on the ladder, that is must-watch TV.
Great games.
And Adelaide and Fremantle was going to be a great game as well. So they just overcomplicate everything. It's like actually someone did the fixture draft and forgot to check it. We can go back through it and go, hang on, you know what, that could be a bit of an issue.
So what is the reason for that, Damo?
Well, there's a quite a long list of reasons. One of the reasons and one of the explanations today is that game, the Sydney Swans game on the specifics of this Friday, will be broadcast on 7, live and free, into that market at that particular point in time. And the other element too, Sam, and again, you can dispute this if you want to, but they do work backwards from 6 and 7 and 8 day game breaks to free up the options they've got in subsequent weeks. But
it's a mess now.
I'm with Jimmy on it when it comes to how it does look.
It's too early in the season where we're talking about this. The energy we lost in the round 0, round 1, they should never be losing energy because there's too many average sides that by round 6 or 7, a lot of teams have lost hope anyway, and you lose the supporters. That shouldn't be happening in the first few weeks.
That was the water cooler, all thanks to Hyundai, helping you live your biggest life. One of those average sides, to put it politely, Lordo, is the Richmond Footy Club. Adam Uze has problems. Damo has been on this now for a number of months on this show, and he's starting to get quite concerned, is the Richmond coach.
Just we weren't up to standard the first quarter. To give up 6 goals from stoppage isn't, one, it's not the right way to play, but it's not what you want to do on the road. And yeah, to start that way, we're just a little bit scattered around stoppage. And like I said, giving up that type of start, the alarm bells are ringing.
Sam, I am worried, and I have been raising it almost weekly now on Footy Classified, but they're in a sequence now where they've lost 10 matches in a row. Obviously, that goes back into last season as well. Their last 4 losses have been by 68, 60, 42 and 56. These are big losses. Of the 44 games that Adam Uze has lost, out of a total of 51, 24 of them have been lost by 7 goals or more. There is a mounting toll here of disastrous numbers. Now, the club has backed him until the end of 2028, so I'm not questioning his position within this, but there is a toll, I think, that is damning now and damaging on him personally and some of these players who are being forced to endure this stage early of this massively undertaken rebuild of this football club, which ultimately began in the 7 selections they got in the first 28 picks in the 2024 national draft.
The only thing I'd say is the club used to support, and you and my is our clubs have been in no man's land for so long. They won 3 flags, and if you go down because you've won 3 flags and all the players want to move on and the coach moves on, at least you've got that. And I think they're doing it the right way. At least they're doing it with that many kids, and that's why they're so poor.
The kids are injured, Lord. I was part of this. They're getting banged up and damaged, and they're not getting the games into the big ones that they wanted to.
That's right.
I think you're both right in the sense that it was amazing that they won the 3 flags. There was always going to be a fall. But I think Damo's point is the more we go down this track and they get used to losing by such heavy margins,
but at least
that might have a lasting impact.
They've got a lot of kids not playing who are high end.
Yeah, but you just don't want them growing up early days in footy getting belted every week, to Damo's point.
Yeah.
And some better signs for the GWS Giants. We've sort of bemoaned their start to the year. A bit of attention to detail, of course, around stoppage. And they started that game brilliantly around centre bounce and stoppage. They brought in Nick Madden, who's been sitting on the wings as well, while Kieran Briggs has had the number one role. And good players certainly help, of course, with Daniels, Buckley, Bedford. Cadman came in and then unfortunately got that pretty serious blow to the face.
Maybe top 6, Jimmy?
No, I don't think they're a top 6 side. I think they're 6 to 10, because if you have a look at the current top 6, and that's without Adelaide being in it, I think it's pretty hard to displace those top 6 for the Giants.
Jimmy, Carlton lost another match of footy, but it was, I'd say, undoubtedly their best performance of the year against the Crows in Gather Round. They did so on the back of making a pretty significant change at selection with George Hewitt out, and the midfield did look very different. Yeah,
it looked a little bit different, and they brought Zach Williams into that midfield mix. They brought down, I guess, Jagger Smith's midfield minutes from previous weeks, but I think it more pointed to some players who have come into the club actually had better games. I thought that was Ainsworth's best game for Carlton in his early career there. Florent had greater impact. Carroll off the wing was certainly dynamic in his role, and Sam Walsh was fantastic in the first quarter, but they faded as the game went on, but it was much better output from Carlton.
It is not lost on me that Carlton lost another game and we are somehow trying to turn that into a positive. Is that lost on anyone else?
Even those names, none of them. There's no, like, even though Cripps is a 2 times Brownlow medalist, there's nobody who you hope Smith will be that in time, but they're so far off the best midfields of, say, you have the Sydney Swans or the Western Bulldogs.
Walsh was a star.
Yeah, but Walsh is a star, but he's still not a star in terms of,
What was your expectation? Sorry, Lloyd. What was your expectation, Sam, at the start of the year at Carlton when you...
Not to be bottom 4 with a percentage of 75.
Okay, that's pretty fair. No, but it's pretty fair. But
and falling in against Richmond, as they did by a kick. In
the apathy that we have been hoodwinked into to just believe that everything is fine and calm. I think they've been so poor. They actually deserve credit for it, for convincing us all. Because they are languishing at the bottom of the ladder. They are, I think, Essendon are 0.6% ahead of them, and it's been alarm bells at Essendon for the best part of a decade. It is amazing the apathetic nature to which we treat this footy club now. That's just an outsider.
I think we belted them so hard for three or 4 weeks. It gets tiresome.
It does get tiresome, but that doesn't mean we should start to accepting mediocrity. Do you agree with that?
Yeah, I agree with that,
Okay, I'll tell you something else we agree with is that Jimmy Bartell wanted to do back with the flight again for a second week.
Very good.
But our man, the Lord, has come in and said, no, the Sledgehammer is back. Speaking of back, Eddie and the team are back on Footy Classified tomorrow night alongside Fiji Airways, who are on board as the classified team in 2026. Eddie and the team to be recognising that Fiji Airways Player Performance of the Year. The winning player gets 2 business class return flights with Fiji Airways to Fiji and then on to the US, plus 5 nights accommodation in Fiji. It's Fiji Airways, proud partner of Footy Classified and the Performance of the Year.
Buku Khamis, like his team, had a good season up until Saturday night, but he was disappointing Saturday night where there's a technical flaw with Buku. So you've got to have an eye on the kicker and an eye on your man. And watch Buku. He actually loses sight of Jack Gunston because he only watches the player with the ball. He actually doesn't watch his opponent. He's got to have one eye there, and Buku just focuses the whole time on the ball carry. He's got no idea who's behind him in Jack Gunston, who kept wrapping up behind him. Bodie Ueland, he would have learnt a bit playing on Tom Papley. So he's in a perfect spot, Ueland, on Papley. You've got to see it out and go with him. Papley, amazing how he reads where the hands are going. So when we see this one here where Papley, he reads it, so he can see where the hands are dropping. Ueland goes to the back, he goes to the front. Amazing crumbing from Tom Papley. Harvey Langford, he was tentative like his team the other night. So this 3 occasions could have shown 4 where you watch him. Is he going to go? Is he going to go? He's looking and he's not going. So he's a big body, but he didn't play strong enough against the Bombers on Saturday afternoon. The Hawks, well, their defensive pressure, they suffocated the Western Bulldogs. So there's nothing better when you force a team to go backwards. So what's the Doggies? They're looking to get out, backwards, handballs, backwards. And you know you've got a team when you're forcing them back. So they force them back. They got repeat stoppages, and that's where they went to work. This block from Mitch Lewis on the Wizard Watson, they were on in every department, Hawthorn, just making things happen at stoppage, working for each other, which the Doggies weren't up for. Well, Daniel McStay, he misses this goal. So he misses, and everyone misses shots for goal. That happens. But you've got to make the most of your next opportunity. This was his next opportunity to make an impact. They're still in front by 5 points. That was pretty poor by Daniel McStay. He had to be stronger than that. the Saints were smashing the power at clearance. So what they did really well, they said, let's pull all our forwards out and give ourselves space at the stoppage. Really smart from Ross Lyon to give him Garcia all the space to run into by drawing all your forwards close to goal and give you space. And the last one is the North transition. They fell apart, North, and the big knock on Clarkson is, in the past, he can't teach his team to defend. So on turnover, watch the North players. You've got to come forward and press in and put pressure. They're all going back. Everyone's running back. That's what the Bombers were doing early in the season. And there's no pressure all the time and space. These guys are running backwards as well. And then in the blink of an eye, Brisbane put about 6 goals on North when they were in front, Sammy.
Oh, great work, Lordo. He's had the week off to freshen up, and oh, hasn't he delivered. Hey, speaking of delivering, lots of rule changes Damo delivered at AFL House in the off-season. Greg Swan's just got his feet under the desk, as it were. How's it all panning out, do you think, early days?
Oh, look, I think there's some teething issues on some of those issues you've got up on screen there, Sam. I don't think they've ever got the technology right when it comes to how it's used and the use of the even arc in these decisions that are being made now with the decisions to pay free kicks for the balls that go out of bounds between the arcs. So I think that's one issue. The lasso free kicks, obviously, that's been open to discretion even at this early stage of a season. It wasn't meant to continue to be complicated, but it has been, I think, in that regard. And the stand rule tool, I'm a massive advocate for the stand rule in its authenticity, which was introduced by Stephen Hawking, but I think it's been relaxed, and even certain sets of umpires within certain games relax it more than others do. So I think if we got some uniformity on all of that, particularly the stand rule, it might be something we could tick off on a bit better.
Anything else you've noticed with players and potentially the way that they're going into contests given the new rules?
Yeah, it's always been a pet peeve of mine when we were taught football. It's don't put your head where your backside belongs, but there's actually no incentive to have the proper technique and the proper way you should approach a football, because if you take the ball and keep your head down, you will get a free kick. And we know how beneficial field position, potential shots...
Wasn't meant to be that way, Jimmy, particularly this year. That was meant to be play on.
Look, I get the intention was right when we go back quite a number of years where we're protecting the head to stop players running through players and completely shirt fronting them. But now what's that turned into is if you keep leading with your head and approach the football like that, you'll likely receive a free kick, which is actually now...
It's weaponised.
It's weaponised, and it's actually made it more dangerous for players when they go get the footy. Your head and neck is so vulnerable in that position.
Good call, bad call is next on Footy Classified. The full team is back together for Good Call, Bad Call thanks to Tab, but Jimmy Bartell with a new ball as well. Jimmy, a year is a long time in football. Good call, bad call.
I think you might be referring to Jack Higgins. Let's look at the turnaround from Jack.
Any plans for the week in Adelaide?
No, I don't like Adelaide, so I'll probably be in my room playing Call of Duty with the boys. I don't know. I'll probably winery tomorrow. What else is to do? Go down Jetty Road. I heard the Adelaide boys talking about it, but I like the Limestone Coast, so if you ever get any spare time, Limestone Coast do it.
If that wasn't enough, he went up another level, there at Mount Lofty Botanical Gardens, proposing to his lovely there. Well done to Jack and his partner. They might be handing him the keys to South Australia off the back of that.
Amazing what happens when cash is involved.
Wouldn't know.
Yes, you would. Hey, Sam, to you. The Crows have a case when it comes to the standard of officiating in their games this year. Good call, bad call.
No, that's a bad call from you, Damo. That's I thought we've been here before call. Tim Silvers in the Adelaide Crows under new leadership has done such a good job to get the Adelaide Crows away from this victim mentality. But unfortunately, it seeped in again on the weekend. This is Taylor Walker. I'd just like to know what we're doing about it. Don't make apologies, just tell us solutions. Come on, Taylor. It is not your fault that your team loses games that you should win. The Freo 6-6-6 had no impact on the game. Bad call from Damo.
Damo, AFL journos should count themselves lucky to work in such a respectful environment. Good call, bad call.
I'll answer that, Lordo, but we need to see what Scotty Scheffler, the great golfer, said to a member of the media before I do.
I mean, that was a 65 today. What did it feel like it could have or should have been? That's just a terrible question. Next question. Awful.
What enabled you to...
You should come to some of our press conferences.
For someone, Lordo, who's had a few issues with coaches and players over the journey, they at least answer the question, even the bad ones. So, bad call.
Lloyd here, good. Continuing with the golf team, when your one wood isn't working, you should just chuck it back in the bag. Good call, bad call.
Good call by you, Jimmy. It's Caleb Daniel, who hasn't used the footy as well at the North Melbourne Football Club as he did at Western Bulldogs. So sometimes I reckon you've got to play within your limitations and pull back at times. If you're turning it over and just get your confidence back up or look to just hit the simple ones. And I think Caleb Daniel can try and hit the tricky ones a bit too often.
Damo, to you, regardless of the doctor's call, Sean Darcy singing the song on the weekend was a bad look for the game. Good call or bad call?
Yeah, sometimes we treat these questions, Sam, with a bit of tongue-in-cheek answers, but I'm going to treat this one seriously. That's Sam Darcy, who was subbed out of the game with a concussion.
Sean Darcy, yep.
Sean Darcy with the concussion and the HIA protocols. And look, I'd imagine it was oversight that he's there, but I just was slightly uncomfortable watching him in that moment. I don't know whether I'm reading too much into it, but yeah, that was my take on that. So I think it was a good call and that was a bad look.
Sam, keeping with the gather round theme, sending the back-to-back premiers to the Barossa was disrespectful. Good call, bad call.
Yeah, I actually think it's a good call from you, Jimmy. I mean, like, you can understand the AFL wants to maximise crowds. They want to maximise TV numbers. I totally get that, but they've won the last two flags. Like, I think, if anything, they should have been opening gather round against Adelaide, not Carlton. I think hiding them against North Melbourne and Barossa didn't feel right. So good call from you.
Jimmy, what happened next was even more disrespectful. Good call, bad call?
I think this could be a good call from you, Lloydie. We've got three-time grand finalists, back-to-back premiership. One journo, and that's Danny Daly, the footy manager.
Roger Vaughan.
Yes, Roger Vaughan and Danny Daly filling the seats there. Good call.
Where were you, Sam?
Yeah, Sam.
I was covering one of the 5 games I was paid to cover by the Age. I wasn't there. Where were you, mate?
No cash.
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
No, I was at the Bombers game.
Bring us home, Lord. I mean, good call, bad call. All Isaac Kenny needs is a strong grand final performance to be declared the league's premier player. Good call, bad call.
It's a harsh call, but a good call. I think if he can have a big grand final before his career is over, we'll say there's nothing in this man didn't achieve. I think he can be a Brownlow medalist before it's over as well. So he's been a good finals player, just not a good grand final player, but he's done everything else.
Well done and good call, bad call. Lordo's back with a cook. It's next. Yes, time now for the tab top 3 on Footy Classified. Damo, we'll begin with you.
Yeah, OK. I think the Carlton footy claims a big chance against the Pies in this upcoming Thursday game. And if they don't win, I think they can get very close. Blues to get within 2 goals. Jimmy, what do you got?
MCG, big game, big moments, and this is where Nick Dacos always delivers. 40 touches and 2 goals for me. Lordo, what are you thinking?
Jimmy, Collingwood lost all the big moments against Freo at the Adelaide Oval. They're going to win the big quarter 4 moments and break Carlton's heart again and win a tight one in the last quarter.
It's going to be a big game, Collingwood and Carlton, 2 old rivals doing battle at the MCG to kick off round 6 on Thursday. Well, he's back. I wonder who's worried. It's time for the cook.
Thanks, Sam. Well, I hated doing this to you last year, but this was the Collingwood-Adelaide final. Roaming Brian was doing his thing, all the Fox Footy crew. And that
what did you call him last year?
Scoopy No Friends came out. And
get on his back.
I just felt for you in that situation where you were just looking to find someone to look important through that period. And I thought, surely that could never happen again. But I've actually bought a stinger tonight, so here it is. So here's my stinger. Here's you last night. So this is you last night. Poor Scoopy No Friends was at it again. So I'm actually going to book a flight and come with you the next time. I'll just bring a friend day maybe for a Scoopy No Friends.
Sam, you know where the camera is by now. You've worked in TV pretty much your whole life.
You're saying he might be doing it on purpose?
I've got no doubt he's doing it on purpose.
He's sweating up.
Damo, if I was doing that on purpose, I would have dressed a bit nicer, I would have looked a bit better. I just covered however many games. I was tired, it was late, don't.
Were you dirty on not getting invited to the main AFL function during the week in Adelaide? Was that part of the reason you wanted to get on camera?
Not dirty, just made my job harder to do, to annoy people.
That was very sad music too, Lordo.
I can't believe that there was a stinger with, where have we got to here?
I don't know what you just dropped on him there, but I had to knock back my invite to that.
Oh, you did knock back. Anyway, thanks for joining us on Footy Classified. I promise we actually like each other in real life. We'll see you next week.